This is why I stopped Looksmaxxing and started Dopaminemaxxing instead. So Dopaminemaxxing basically means maxing out your dopamine, which is your motivational hormone in your body. And when you do that, you stop depleting your motivational levels because you'll naturally have more dopamine and do the right habits, which won't like squeeze out your dopamine levels until you don't have anything left, right? Because that's what dopamine and motivation basically is, like a lemon. The more you squeeze it, the more you use it, the more it gets depleted. And you have to wait for it to return back. And that's the big idea of this video, that you should be dopamine maxing and not just looks maxing, because that isn't even a good return on investment for your time and effort. And I'll get into that. But if you're new to this channel and if you're struggling to become attractive enough to attract what you want out of life as a young man, on this channel, my name is Oscar, by the way, and I basically show you how to get attractive in every dimension of life, which I coined multidimensional attractiveness. And basically, it all just comes down to simple, modern health habits that looksmaxing, dating, and fitness influencers don't really talk about that much. So let's get into dopamine maxing. So the first thing you have to realize is that motivation is really important. And sure, that's something you've heard before, but you probably heard that motivation is so important for success and, getting things. But I'd actually argue that sure, it's important for that, but that's not what motivation is most important for. I'd argue that your habits, like what you actually do consistently every day, planting your seeds like a farmer would, is what basically is more important for getting success. But what motivation is also important for is basically to get rid of all bullshit, like to upgrade your life by getting rid of things that you don't want, like getting rid of bad treatment. Like you need motivation to realize that I don't want to get treated like this. Like I want to get treated with more respect in my job, with my classmates or whatever. You need motivation to get rid of shit that you don't really like to basically upgrade your life. And a lot of people don't realize that they lack this type of motivation. They lack that zest in life, right? And then they go on looksmaxing and think, well, I'll just looksmax, I'll just get fucking to a shad level, and then everybody's gonna see me as a shad, as someone they respect. And that's not true. Like, bro, isn't that crazy that you and me probably because I did try looksmaxing like years ago and didn't really get any more respect, didn't really get any better results with girls because I didn't even talk to girls. And I wasn't a guy to respect because I didn't have good posture and I basically wasn't multidimensionally attractive, which is the best case scenario if you do want to get a beautiful, good quality girlfriend, which I now have. And if you do want to get respect, which I now get, and if you do want the best lifestyle, which I now feel like I have. But anyway, basically you need that zest in life, right? So that's just why motivation is important. And next, I want you to think about making some kind of cost benefit decision, which a lot of people think they might do this in their daily life, but they probably don't, and you probably don't either do this. And you basically want to value options that you have in life, because you do have options. Like, I don't want to hear that limiting belief, bro, that you can't do this, and this is hard and I can't put in that much effort, I don't have time, because you can basically looksmax or get a lot more attractive in a multidimensional way, which I prefer, which means you get attractive in all dimensions of life, not just the aesthetic facial one, right? And you can do that and make a big jump even if you don't have a lot of time, right? But I want you to start making cost benefit decisions to dopamine max, basically. And that means that you value your options on the reward and the effort and time. So you actually take that into consideration. And most people, like I said, don't do this. And what they instead do is just feed on whatever options that modern technology has given them. So if you look back 150 years ago, you really didn't have options like we have today, right? A random kid couldn't just have an iPad and do whatever he want, basically search off porn, search up, the dark web, or start a fucking business. Like you didn't have these options, but today you literally can do anything on a piece of technology, right? A piece of phone, and basically everyone has a phone, and that's the options that you want to like start avoiding a little bit, because those are probably the ones that are depleting your dopamine the most, right? Making you like you probably feel like you have some kind of lack of feeling pleasure, right? But that's not really the issue. You don't have a you can feel pleasure, bro, right? But the thing is that you probably feel a lot of pleasure from the things that are the most dopamine depleting. So when you do those things and you get like a lot of pleasure in a very short period of time, like orgasm and fucking watching porn, or like playing a video game and winning, making a good play or something, or scrolling social media. These things are going to give you a dopamine spike, and then your dopamine is going to get depleted below that baseline where it actually started. So you're going to feel less motivated, but you do have the potential, bro, to actually feel motivated. And if you want to dopamine max, you should basically value the options that you do have, the the options you can use to make up your time, right? And you should value those options based on that time, reward, effort system. So then you realize that going on your phone and scrolling for like 3 hours a day, which was probably a low day of scrolling for me back in the days, and might be for you too if you actually go and check your screen time. And if you value that and look at the reward and the time and the effort, you're going to realize that that isn't something that you want to do, right? That isn't a valuable option of spending your time. You're better off actually doing something that will make a good return on investment when you look at those factors. And that's something like exercise. That's something like social interactions, which isn't like playing video games with your friends, but actually going out and doing something. And it isn't like doing drugs and alcohol to excessive limit, right? Because that's just stupid. But normal social interaction. It could be studying. It could be working on a business, because that's basically the best way, online business, right, to make money nowadays. Or it could be something else that you have purpose in, like a sport, and practicing, getting better at it. Whatever fuels your purpose, right? That's a better investment if you look at the reward, if you look at the time and effort, than any of these other short, like instant gratification dopamine things, like binge eating food and watching that Netflix series every day and playing an hour of video games every day, which isn't just an hour, right, bro? If you start playing video games for an hour, chances are you're gonna end up playing for fucking 5 hours and not having any sleep the next day, which is just depleting your attractiveness overall, because obviously sleep is a big health factor and attractiveness is made up of health factors, like I mentioned earlier with multidimensional attractiveness. And what I also want you to think about is to not skip suffering, because our generation, young men right now, we're kind of, we've kind of been brought up by technology, by iPhones and shit like that, and the internet, and we think that skipping suffering is actually better for us than going through some suffering, because we don't need motivation to do the things that we love doing that are relaxing, like scrolling on your phone and fucking talking to low quality girls on Snapchat. We don't really need that much motivation to do those things. But the problem is that we don't suffer, right? We don't go through any problems or pain. So we basically just get pleasure. And that means we're going to get hit with a lot of pain later because that dopamine is going to go below the baseline and we're going to feel depleted, right? And you basically need to start doing some hard things, which you might already be doing, but do the hard things, but do not numb yourself out of them, right? Do not mentally check out of these hard things. So if you're going on a run, don't put on your favorite music or motivational music just so you can like numb out yourself and mentally check out from the experience and think of it as, you know, just pleasure and just fun. Because reality is that you're out running because it's exercise and it's good for your health, but it's actually, you need to sacrifice, right? You need to make a sacrifice. You need to suffer first, then you get the rewards, right? It goes back to that cost benefit decision. That's a good cost benefit decision because you get your reward, right? You get an amazing reward, your health. You don't spend that much time on it. You maybe run for an hour a week. That's basically what I do. And you don't even have to put that much effort in. It's not like you're gonna destroy your knees running for an hour a week, right? It's the same with any type of exercise, like in the gym. You're gonna get bigger, right? And that makes you more attractive in the physical dimension, right? You don't have to put in that much time, and it's effort, but it isn't effort that's gonna, you know, fuck up your life unless you're trying to maybe go pro in bodybuilding. So making these decisions and going through the suffering which comes with, usually comes with the good health habits, like there's even some suffering to going to sleep on the same time every day, right? Because you can't go out and party 3 times a week. But if you're a ambitious young man, you probably realize that that isn't, and you want to be attractive, multidimensionally attractive, you probably realize that that isn't even a, you know, nice thing to do anyway, that you'd actually enjoy. Anyway, you actually should just ask yourself, when in doubt, how do I actually feel about this thing? Because there will probably be some hard shit that you'll have to do, and you'll start to do it without numbing yourself, without, you know, making yourself have pleasure at the same time to make up for the short period of pain. And basically you go through the pain, but you ask yourself, how do I actually feel about this? And you'll realize that you don't feel that terrible, right? It isn't the end of the world going through some suffering, because you realize that you reap in all the rewards later without even having depleted your dopamine. So now the thing with Dopaminemaxxing that's so amazing is that you get success, right? You get the progression, like you get progress in the gym, for an example. You get bigger, right? You get more attractive, and you also stay motivated. You also get to keep your motivation instead of just depleting it. So be wary of your screen time. Be wary of social media, especially. Like, don't even be on social media consuming bullshit. If you're gonna consume anything, consume like educational podcasts and things like that on YouTube. Not short form content that's brain fucking washing you, right? And do good habits like meditating. I like to journal, meditate. I like to go on walks. I like to have time where I just sit and reflect and don't do anything else, and I barely move, right? All these things help me keep my dopamine levels, and I don't eat some bullshit that just gives me instant sugar and instant tastiness, right? Like a McDonald's meal or Oreo ice cream. I eat healthy foods, and I eat at the same time every day, and I basically eat the same diet, and that works for me. If that doesn't really appeal to you, well, at least try to keep your sugar intake and, you know, the fast food, the processed foods down and eat healthy, unprocessed foods in your diet, and that will transform your health as well, which basically will transform your attractiveness. So you realize that it's linked together, dopamine and health and attractiveness. So this video is actually proof of that dopamine maxing is really what you need. Like, you don't need looks maxing. Like, looks maxing, sure, there's some techniques that can give you a short-term boost in attractiveness or get you a little bit better looking, at least according to other dudes, right? But a lot of the time, it's not actually transforming you anywhere. You're not going anywhere. You're just the same dude with like darker eyebrows or whatever, like a little bit of sharper jawline, a little bit of a better haircut. That you can do that in a day, right? You don't have to like throw your life, like lay your life at Looksmaxxing and invest in that, because it isn't that good of a return of investment of your time, effort, and reward, and the reward you get from it, right? As something like dopamine maxing is, and I hope you've realized this by now in the video, right? And it also applies to everything in life, right? When you actually manage your dopamine, when you dopamine max, you realize how easy life can be in every dimension of it, right? You'll get improvements in your health automatically. You'll get improvement in your social life automatically. Like, you literally be a better human being if your dopamine is managed, right? If you're not depleted of dopamine and can't even motivate yourself to talk to that girl you like, or go out and hang out with your friends, or go get that job interview or something, right? You'll have all the motivation in the world for anything you can imagine, bro. Anything that's possible. And especially becoming multidimensionally attractive, which this channel is about. You'll literally max out. You have the potential to max out every pillar, every dimension of attractiveness, which is the aesthetic, the physical, the sexual, the romantic, the intellectual, and the emotional ones. There's 6 of them. I've covered them in past videos as well. And once you actually level up in all those areas, which you can with the right with the right mindset, the right motivational levels with your dopamine, you'll realize that now you can attract whatever you want out of life. If that's a beautiful girlfriend, you can go get it. If that's a lifestyle where you're free, where you're jacked, where you're confident, you can get that too, right? Anything is possible. And the more attractive you are multidimensionally, not just facially, the more the halo effect, which means that more attractive people basically get more out of life and more compliments, and people assume that they're better at things, the more of that you'll get, right? The more return in life you'll get. And you'll be the healthiest version of yourself, live the longest and live the happiest, right? So it's just all positive, right? That's basically this video, and I have a free Discord server that you can join. It's basically a little community where you can chat to other guys that are interested in multidimensional attractiveness or getting more attractive and healthy. And you'll actually be able to chat to me personally for free and basically just ask me for advice, ask me questions. I'll help you with your personal, your situation and attractiveness and self-improvement. So yeah, join that and subscribe and like if you want to. You don't have to, but if you found the video valuable, you can do that to support this channel, and I'll see you in another video.